Okay, so that's us, by the way, Voter Choice Massachusetts. It's the movement for ranked choice voting, and it's addressing things like the cities where we talked about we could use that proportional representation system like Worcester used to use, or ranked choice voting for district councilors, just one seat. But then we also focus a lot on the state legislative, congressional, governor elections. So that's us, Voter Choice Massachusetts. And at the end of this, we hope you'll get more information, sign up to receive more information. So, a couple of things about ranked choice, and then I'm going to show you an example I want to talk about. Whoa, I started from the beginning. So, okay, so that's us. We advocate for electoral reforms that increase the range of choice on the ballot and produce fairer outcomes for all. The system is spoiled. You recognize the word spoiled. And when you all talk about the things that bug you, that's the way we sum it up. It fails to guarantee majority winners. We're talking about the state and legislative, state legislative and executive elections and federal elections. Fails to eliminate the spoiler effect. Discourages candidates from running. Limits our choice in the voting booth. Rewards negative campaigning. And the solution with ranked choice voting is to eliminate spoilers and vote splitting. Encourage more people to run. Enjoy more positive campaigns. Give voters more choices and more choice, and therefore transform politics in Massachusetts. Instead of voting for one candidate, ranked choice voting allows you to vote for multiple candidates in the order you prefer them. All right, that's your choice, and we spoke about that you don't have to use all your preferences, your choices. There's the ovals. See that? That's a sample ballot that was up in Maine in the sample ballot, and you see the choices on the right side there. Simple, and there could be 5 candidates or 6, and you simply rank your choices, and there's the optical scanning, bubbles you fill in. For the voter, it's a breeze. It allows you to vote for your favorite candidate as your first choice, followed by a series of backup choices, second, third, fourth, etc., in the event your first choice gets eliminated. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at this. 6th Congressional District in Massachusetts. John Tierney, incumbent Democratic congressional representative up in the North Shore of Massachusetts. Challenged by Richard Tassay, Republican. Daniel Fishman, Libertarian. What do you notice about the results? And by the way, do you know who won this election? Tierney, because what was the standard? In election terms, it's called plurality. In other terms, it's the one with the most votes. Right. All right, that's simple. Everyone can agree on that. You win the most votes, you win. But we don't agree with that, looking at this, all right? So, John Tierney wins 48.3% to 47.1%, separated by 3,500 votes. Who else is in the race? Daniel Fishman. Okay. What was his effect? Can we figure it out? Can we presume? Can we analyze it? Yeah.
I disagree in this race. First of all, the presumption would be that those who voted for Dan Fishman were libertarians, and that they wouldn't have voted for John Tierney. Probably 3 out of 4 of the people who voted for Dan Fishman would have voted for John Tierney if Fishman wasn't on the ballot. The presumption that to say would have got Fishman's vote is quite wrong in this particular case. Now, there's other cases where it works the way you described it. This one is an exception.
I'm with you in a lot of ways because I don't ever conclude. I wanted to hear some opinions here. I don't ever conclude that it always flows one way. But there is a classic scenario and a classic expectation that if a Libertarian Party candidate runs, it risks being a spoiler and hurting whose chances? Primarily the Republicans, okay? Oh, under RCV, you can get transfers flow in all sorts of ways. If we had RCV in the last election, I mean, what do we hear about? Trump and Bernie voters, all right? that one would go one way and go the other, all right? So no, I totally agree with you. One can never say that. But I actually have a point for putting this in, apart from your interest remarks there, okay? It was not a fair assumption, but it might be that in a situation, that a third candidate or fourth can split the vote and catapult and cause a plurality winner. And when you could argue, that's not a true majority. Well, let's, under RCV, if the first choice winner doesn't have a majority, and remember, back to your question, game's over as soon as someone has first choice, majority. That's not an issue whatsoever, okay? You clear that 50%, or more than 50% hurdle, you're elected. End of discussion. And I'll show you a dynamic on that. We can't only say that if only this person hadn't been here, the Republican would have won. It's the voters who decide, okay? Sometimes you drop a third person and they transfer ballots to the front runner, put them over 50%, shake hands, congratulations, you're the majority winner. There's nothing that can't happen on that. Yes?
So if what you are showing on the screen right now is the results of all the ones, then what?
Okay. If this were ranked choice voting, you would say the election's not over, no one has cleared the majority threshold, no one has more than 50%. You would then drop off this candidate, look at all the ballots.
So what does that mean? All the people, all the ballots that had Fishman as ones, those ballots are what?
Literally reviewed and transferred to the second choice.
So the Fishman voters, number 2.
So then it possibly would have put to say over the top.
So to say,
Or at least made it so close that you have a runoff.
No, possibly yes. I respect, the alternative about this particular race, but yes, let's say 90% of the Libertarian favor the Republican, then and 100% of them put down the second choice. Remember I told you don't have to? Okay, but 100% use their privilege, all right, their right to do it. Literally, it becomes a 51-49 race, possibly.
Right.
Okay, literally you take that voting power that didn't work. You said, at least you had your first choice. Now your vote literally, literally transfers, okay? In the paper ballot, you would see it go from Fishman is out of the race, you take the ballots and you drop them in the pile and count. It's metaphorically the same exact thing right now. It's going into the respective. One of the two of them is going to be the majority winner of the remaining ballots. If there was a fourth candidate, you would have, and would you say that Daniel Fishman, what's the first thing we talk about when we look at Daniel Fishman's 4.5? Oh, it might have been a spoiler, but under RCV, might he have had more? Might he have had, that's the key. If you show this and say, what would it look like under ranked choice voting, you're missing one of the other points. Maybe he would be at more than 4.5. Why didn't people vote who might have supported other views? Is because the spoiler effect. I'm not going to risk it. Okay? And so that becomes, maybe there's a fourth candidate, you drop from the bottom, all right? So if it's a 40, 38, a crowded ballot or something, and you drop the fourth place finisher if there are 4, and now it becomes a 43, 41. Wish I would better get these numbers rolling off my tongue. They add up to 100, and then person's now in third place. Sorry, no one has a majority yet. You drop that person off, and you're guaranteed a true majority winner. Guaranteed a true majority winner at the end. Literally, that voting power goes from the one who couldn't use it, remember that phrase? Couldn't use it to be elected? And the voter's free to give them that vote? Not only would we say 4.5%, maybe it's going to be a 10% or 11%, or maybe in the polls, or they, without the spoiler effect, would have risen even higher. So we're never going to say automatically these go here. Again, I appreciate your specifics. But one of the reasons I like this slide and this race is John Tierney went big in 2010. He was damaged goods a bit here in the primary.
Criminal activity.
He was damaged goods, and that emerged between primary where you had no Democratic opponents. And what happened in the 2014 race? The Democrats saw a weakened candidate, swooped in, a lot of people running, and he was no longer there. We favor ranked choice voting in primaries, not just for general elections. When an open seat happens, right? Someone retires or dies and moves on to a different office. In Republican and Democratic primaries, often you get 8 candidates competing. We've had elections where someone won with the most votes. That was 28%, right?
17 this time around.
Okay, yeah. And so ranked choice voting would take those large fields and simply drop off from the bottom if no one gets, and maybe that 27% plurality winner is going to get eventually, raised up through transfer ballots. But maybe the second choice or third choice person is going to move up because too many people were competing for that same pool of votes. The voter decides. Who do they want? Yeah.
What would happen if Dan, so if you take that, say 5 out of 9 Dan Fishman voters did not put a second choice down, therefore there's only 2% left to play with and it broke 50-50. So Tierney ends up with 49.3 and Tisei ends up with 48.1.
Okay, great question. When we say majority winner, we're talking about of the remaining active votes. It's the equivalent, you've heard of majority runoffs. Sometimes, people don't return to vote, the number might be different. So when I say clears 50%, it means that of the ones who still have a preference, it's 50.
You get it down.
You get it down to the 2, and someone must have a majority. Excellent question. Okay. So, yes. Yes, go ahead.
So I just want to understand your answer to that. What would you then do if it's 49?
It wouldn't be. It would be counted as saying we started with 100,000 ballots, and we only have 98,000 active now because some Fishman voters didn't put a second preference. So now it's the majority of the 98,000 because these are the people. Remember how we said we respected the person who said, the hell with the others, all I want is my candidate, and they have the right to do that? The 98,000 who still have that, are still in the game, determine the majority winner. Right? Do you have a follow-up? Do you look? If you had a majority, if you said come back in 2 weeks and we'll have a majority runoff, and then just have the top 2, some of these people wouldn't come back to vote, right? This used to be called, in one of its times, instant runoff voting. I don't know if you ever heard that. The idea is, it's the same as saying, okay, we didn't get a majority, let's run off the top 2. Some people don't return to vote. It's okay, and the majority of that election is based on who showed up. This is based on the majority of those who are showing up through either voting for John Tierney, Richard Tisei, or Daniel Fishman, who chose to have a second choice. Maybe that's 98,000 and not 100,000. We respect the right of that 2,000 to not rank further choices. But it's just, are we okay? Does that make some sense?
Move on.
Yes, okay, move on. All right. So I wanted to bring this up because, this involves, who you put up through your primaries and then what happened in 2014 and it was Tierney had won big in there. So the dynamics, when you put all your chips on just one candidate through primaries, you want to make sure they're the right candidate. And Voter Choice Massachusetts thinks that these large fields for open seats in primary elections are one of the problems in figuring out who should be a party's nominee. Should you be the party nominee on 27% in an 8-person race? 2 things. Maybe you have majority support and ranked choice voting. With the 8 people, the 8th drops off, they transfer, then you recount, right? And then maybe that 27% is the majority winner. But we've seen cases where it could be credibly claimed that 60%, 65, 70% actively oppose the 27% first place primary. There was a whole bunch of people splitting their votes among people with shared an interest, and they all played spoilers, and someone who didn't have the majority support, and the party's putting up the wrong person. Yes?
I just got a question.
Yeah.
Okay.
you have the Democrats and you have the Republicans.
Yes.
And you go through all of this. I don't think that would work, and I'll tell you why. We vote for a Democrat, they go for 4 years or 8 years. We go for a Republican, they go for 4 years and 8 years. And things don't change. They're all the same. And we're watching this right now in Washington. What is going on? I would think that if we had an option for an automatic recall, that those people who voted for Desai and Fishman don't like what's going on with Turney or whoever was voted, they would vote for an automatic return. That would be for a Republican as well. A recall. That's the only thing that you're going to be able to do to get these bums out of there. Because they have figured out money and power go together. They're going with the money. You can see that with the Republicans, and you can see that with the Democrats. And then they got the power. And the people who have the power are the people on Wall Street. They've got the money. And again, all right, we can see it right now developing what's going on now. We send people to Washington to represent us as Republicans, and they are not representing us. Now, Massachusetts is something else because they're mostly Democrats. But the idea is, how do you stop these people once they get in? And that's the thing. They're just looking to get in. Once they get in, they'll get the money to buy themselves another election. And that's the problem that we have. And if you look at Washington right now, most of the people in Washington, the Republicans, are against the president. And they're the ones that we, not us, but basically the people voted for. I voted for Trump, obviously, okay? But he's not getting the support from anybody, you see? So what are we going to do? We need a recall. That means that if we vote for a Republican and he doesn't support the president, we can get a recall vote to get him replaced and have somebody to put up there in his place. And this would eliminate a lot of the stuff that's going on down there if, in fact, okay, the Wall Street people stay out of it. And the Wall Street people, and you know damn right well, they bought the House and the Senate. Because we're going through this new $7 trillion infrastructure that Trump wants. We owe $20 trillion. Where are we going to get that other $7 trillion? You're going to get it from Wall Street. How? Because they control the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve will print the money, they'll give it to the government, and who's going to pay the interest on that loan? The American people. And we're not going to be any better off than we were before. So this is what we got to do. That's just all I got to say.
What I heard there was a technical solution that you want to see, but I also heard a political perspective that you don't think is being advanced for all those pieces of that puzzle that you want.
That's why I would vote.
Yes,
I vote politically.
but you went from the recall mechanism, which I don't have a specific position or voter choice on, to saying they're making wrong decisions on this, and this, and in fact they don't even allow recall, and I prefer recall. Those are political positions. Do you have a mechanism under current systems to get those heard? To get those heard by running candidates who speak to exactly the type of things you're saying, or, you know, let's say you had support enough and you ran in 9 congressional districts of an alternative party to the Republicans, and you felt you had 10% of the vote, and you run in those 9 districts, and you get your 10%, how many seats did you win?
1.
How many debates did you influence? Okay, no, and you won 0. That's not the issue that you had 10% that time and didn't get any of the 9 seats, and that's where proportional representation as a concept comes in. What's next is 2 years later you run. Do you get 10% now?
You may get a whole lot more.
No, or yes. If you think, but aren't you at risk of getting a whole lot less? Because people feel they wasted their vote. People think, oh my God, if I had not voted for that person, I might have gotten the Republican in, and all these things. You might end up at 1%, dismissed as fringe, don't want to be heard. It's all those things you identified as your program that you'd like to see. Ranked choice voting, whether applied to the legislative, the things we talked in the city, or a bill now in Congress to put proportional representation so we can get different parties in the 9 seats, called the Fair Representation Act. All of those things are ways a party can advance an agenda, not be dismissed as can't win, don't want to hear, and that's the difference. So no, I don't know what to I don't have a specific position on whether we should have recall. What I'm looking for is electing the right people in the right place, in the first place.
Recall is gonna be your only option.
And that's a position, and if you've answered that, let's hear it, yes.
So, the reason, even if your guy doesn't get in, and the other guy, the other guy actually gets in and starts doing all the stuff you don't want, the other guy that got in is gonna start seeing people turning away from him when he goes for re-election. They care about two things. One, getting elected, two, getting re-elected. If they start seeing 30 to 40% of the vote start going away, especially under this system where they might lose a seat, or they might even lose control of the place they're representing, that's going to send big messages to them.
That's leverage.
So,
And even if you don't.
Well, listen, hang on. We're already seeing it anyway. Just watching how the Republicans are behaving now in Congress. I have news for you folks, whether you like it or not, they're going to get primaried out. Of course, that does throw up a giant wild card. We could lose seats to Democrats. But again, it's their own shooting themselves in the foot that they're doing this. That they're doing it to themselves. First time in a long time in American history we have Republicans, president, vast majority in the House, Senate, yada yada, all the way through the states. 1,200 seats lost. We're squandering. You're right. We're squandering it.
That's my
So
point.
a lot of this is going to be primaried out.
That's my point. You've got these people
they're
out there, and you don't get anywhere.
Coco's already retired.
we're seeing more people
Coco retired because he was
Right,
getting
right. And
Right.
what is Flake's retired now too? Look at the past couple of special elections that have just gone on. Democrats ran up, a lot of money was thrown at them at the same time, won by Republicans. Excuse me. What you're seeing is a potential shift. One of the things that I've done for a long time on my show is interview a lot of grassroots candidates. We're at this cusp now. I've interviewed so many candidates, and all the time it's the same story. They're grassroots, they're being marginalized by the Republican Party here in Massachusetts, and the Republican parties in the various states of the different candidates that I've interviewed from various states. It's always the same story. But we're at a point now where there's a cusp here. We're at a cusp where these people could be primaried out, and finally, a lot of these grassroots people could finally, maybe take those seats.
My point is this: if you get these people out that you want out, and then come in with a new person, and they're the same, because they want to play ball, they want to
Unfortunately,
keep their job.
that's
Well, people have said that, but this is what they do. This is what happens in Washington. They get along so that they can play with, and get the money that they need,
So-
they get their little bitty committees and all this stuff.
Let me also.
well, what he's talking about what Patrick Barron talked about in 2010 about the machine, the process of the machine. You get somebody in Washington. Okay, let's say a Shiva gets in, or a Deal, or whoever wins the election gets in. They're going to quickly find out. It's like, oh, very good. Welcome to Congress. Welcome to the Senate, Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so. And it's like, oh, by the way, you got to go over across the street and hit the phone banks. That's what you're going to have to do. Oh, yeah, that legislation. Yeah, that's nice. Give that to me. We'll put it on the shelf over here. Go across the street and start working the phones. That's one of the things that Patrick Barron revealed in 2000. So you're right, because once they get in there, that's what they're going to be
Play
greeted
the
with.
game and they keep the money. And
That's-
this is why we have this problem, because
Okay.
there's no difference between Democrats and the Republicans.
Let's get back to
This
this.
gentleman first.
Well, heaven knows this country is in serious trouble. So it seems to me, this is at least worth a shot. And so, that being the case, how far are you along again
Okay.
for any implementation?
There are bills, and testimony was heard like a week and a half ago on a bill to bring in ranked choice voting for all state elections. Period. Boom. And then there's remember I spoke of a bill, mentioned the Worcester, and we talked about that, a local option bill without going through a charter change, just instead of taking, unfair elections at a local level, you could put in ranked choice voting. We're going to be working hard on those. We're just looking to raise this issue, be committed to getting it on the agenda. And so I'm not telling you it's around the corner, but I'm saying we're working extremely hard. Maine made history in adopting statewide ranked choice voting for all its offices. It's a rather crazy little situation going up there, and more news was made yesterday with the courts and the legislature and overruling the petition. I don't want to get into all that, but that was a statewide ballot initiative that passed in 2016 where the voters said, we want a system like this, all right? So that has helped energize us. We have a history in the state, the ones I told you about, Worcester and all that, the problems we have with plurality election, non-majority winners, and we're serious about this. And part of this discussion is all part of that. Yes?
Well, I understand everybody's, and I guess with the idea that you're proposing, I don't feel I know enough about it, studied enough yet to really make an opinion, but I think one of the biggest problems that we have is the length of terms and term limitations. Because you take Congress, 2 years, you take Mass State Rep, Mass State Senate,
Yes.
2 years, okay? If they're new, it takes them 6 months to figure out where the bathroom is. They work for 6 months, then they get distracted, and then the last 9 months they run for re-election. So you get 9 months out of 2 years, maybe, okay? And I'm sure that's even worse in the federal government. So, in my own personal opinion, I would like to see these 2-year terms become 4, okay, and 4 become 6. But on the other side of that, maximum of 2 terms. And then, like you were bringing up, like, because man, how many times have I interviewed with him, talk about that, that whole situation on what they have to do in Washington. It eliminates that, because guess what? You can only win twice, and then you're done. And yes, it sometimes might hurt somebody who's really good, but let's really honestly think right now in the federal government, how many people in Congress are really good?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, it shakes up the salad bowl is what it does.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do we really have only, 700 qualified Americans to be in government?
Right. And you know,
I can't believe that. There's millions of us.
and the other little thing I just want to make a
Yes.
comment to help your cause.
Yes?
I just think that the election that you cited with Tassay is really not a good example. And I'll tell you why I say that. The demographics of Tassay, I happen to know Richard really well.
Yes?
I worked in the State House, whole long story. He really was a fiscal conservative.
Yes.
He was Senate Minority Leader. He was phenomenal. But everybody tagged him, oh, he's gay, and he's the one with the bathroom bill. No. The reason that the bathroom bill came forward is because when you're an elected official within a district and somebody comes to you with a well-written bill, you have the obligation for your constituent, I said that word, I never say that word, to file that bill. And there is a woman, well, kind of a woman, from Saugus by the name of Ashley Bottoms. They started a national organization called Girls Night Out. And what they would do, I'm going to use this place here as an example. These very tall women would come. They would come here 3 or 4 nights a week for 6 or 7 months. Everybody would love them. And then all of a sudden they'd come in, and I would grow a beard, and Matt would grow a beard. We wouldn't do anything else, but we'd put on a dress some night and they'd show up. And of course the owners would go, oh, what the hell's this? Well, they're friends of ours. See? And that's where Ashley brought it. And when Ashley was on Dan Ray one night up against, what's that group that you know runs?
Renew Mass.
Thank you. The guy from Renew Mass was on there trying to stand up for family values. She destroyed him. And I know Dan Ray really well. And Dan said to me, I planned this for 45 minutes maximum, maybe half an hour. And it went 2.5 hours because the calls that this person generated, right? So I will just say that maybe look for another one, because that election to me was so skewed, and I never realized, I have to thank you, I never realized how close it was.
It was very close. And
I knew it was close, but I didn't realize it was that close.
it was very close. And
It's constantly used by Republicans.
we could have, well, we have a report on all the non-majority winners in the legislature, and a lot of them happen in the primaries, and then the person wins election to the legislature and goes uncontested for the next 20 years. The primaries. You spoke about primaries. I just want to show this. And this gentleman, Ron Salam, is being, from the National Review, you're familiar with him, and he's being honored by Fair Vote as a champion of democracy in November. I believe I'll be going down to New York for that. And the focus is not so good, I think, here. Okay. And he's talking about, you're talking about primaries, you're talking about who do I vote in the primary, do I express we're back to our same problem, which is why we're proposing in Massachusetts for single districts like rep or senator or US senator or governor, primaries included, all right? You shouldn't have to say, I think that person might be the better candidate, but I prefer with this one, and this one might split the vote, and there's 7 of them. Get rid of that. Rank your choices, 1, 2, 3, as you wish, and drop off from the bottom and get the majority winner. And this is the Fair Representation Act he's talking about, which is now in Congress, to include a proportional representation. Why should there be 9 Democrats in Massachusetts? Well, obviously that's not representative, okay? And if you structured the districts into multi-member districts, okay, 3 here, and 3 there, and 3 there for the 9, then everyone certainly would get more diverse representation within those using this ranked choice voting, and that's exactly what the Fair Representation Act does. So he says, I know it's small here, when you combine single-member districts into bigger multi-member districts, the picture starts to look quite different. The beauty of multi-member districts is that they allow us to use what Fair Vote calls fair representation voting. Imagine if Netroots Democrats or Tea Party Republicans made an impact not by launching primary challenges, but by setting up shop as separate political entities. Instead of dragging the major parties to the left or to the right, they'd be able to compete with them on a level playing field. It'd be a bit like the startup world where venture-backed entrepreneurs routinely take on entrenched incumbents, okay? So, what ties the Fair Representation Act for Congress with proportional representation? And the ranked choice voting proposals now in the State House for governor and senator, or those single districts we have, or the city history of Worcester, or anywhere else you can use these systems to give voice and then allow those simple ranking. The simple act of ranking your preferences, 1, 2, 3, to make sure your vote isn't wasted. To make sure you didn't lie awake at night saying, I'm not sure who I really want to give it to, or what's worse. I've been in that situation, you've been in that situation. You know what's worse? When you think, I hope they don't run. I hope they don't run because this might be the effect. Or we're going to have 4 people in that primary, and what if we put up the weaker candidate because they win with a plurality, and we lose to the party we like least, okay? All we're talking about, and we can have 100 examples or 1,000. I don't use examples that often, and I appreciate all your comments. My point is fairness. It doesn't guarantee you win. It guarantees that you have a voice. You don't have to worry about wasting your vote and all these things. Let me show you a graphic on just the process and address quickly what you said about what happens if a majority. Sorry. Okay, and okay. So no, I want this one. This one. There's a basic way. If you see tally voters first choice up in the upper left, you see that? I don't have to be here. This is the count. I just want to show you, I said I represent your question way back. Count them. You have 100,000 ballots, you have 1,000, you have 1,000,000, whatever. Count them. Everyone presumably has a first choice because they went and voted, all right? Does any candidate have a majority? More than 50% of these first choices. Yes, majority winner. Game over. Done. We've done our democratic bit. We got the majority winner. We're satisfied. We may not be the one we wanted to win, but we're satisfied democratically. What if no one has a majority? Has 47%, or has 28%, or 37% in the crowded field? We're not satisfied we got the majority. Toss out the last place candidate, it might be the last of 7. Large field, right? You know about those large races, especially for some of those open seats. You know that something's going to happen in a lot of the primaries. Eliminate the last person candidate. They can't win. They had a fair shot. Their voters had a fair shot. Do they have a second choice? ballots from eliminated candidate, for eliminated candidate, count towards voters' next choice, put them in the pile, recount them. Does any candidate have a majority? Election's over. No, still not yet. The person went up from 38% to 42, and then but the second place has just moved up with, you know, from 5 percentage points behind to very close now, and go back. And what you're going to end up with here is majority winner. Just because we are talking about that Worcester system, or the thing I told you Salam was talking about for Fair Congress and the Fair Representation Act, you can see the similarities and why they both use ranked choice voting. Okay? If we go fade that out and fade this in, it's pretty simple. Tally voters' first choices, but remember we have 3 seats or 9 seats like Worcester had, right? You don't need a majority, you need 1/3 for 3 seats. You need one, you know, okay? Any candidate who meets that threshold, and by the way, 50% majority, that's a threshold, all right? That's why we declare the winner. If you get, elect anyone. And Chris, this is what I said, if not all available seats are filled, that surplus, yeah, let's take a look at the second choices in case more people voted than needed for that person. Retally, does anyone get elected? And then you eliminate the last place candidate, you take the ballots, count towards the voter's next choice, retally the ballots. You could have 20 people for the 9 seats. You know that a majority of voters will have a majority of the seats because it didn't worry if an interest group ran 5 and they could only win 2. They got it. By not splitting their votes, not wasting their vote, it's just a little different dynamic. I just wanted to show you the similarity of the Worcester process, okay? We talked about how the votes are counted. It's got this extra piece in here. Don't let even waste a vote on someone who doesn't need it to be elected. That's all. It's the same thing. And for the voters, it's 1, 2, 3. No problem. It's the same thing. Ranked choice voting applied to primary elections, general elections, state races, federal races, local elections. The Fair Representation Act for Congress, the local option to bring back what Worcester had, and I think we're going to be ending. You have a real quick one?
Yes, I think a
Yes.
real quick one. When you were mentioning the Fair Representation Act, it
Yes.
sounded like you were applying to U.S. congressmen.
It's an act in Congress to require proportional representation using fair representation using ranked choice voting. So remember, I showed you, so it would require districts of either 3, 4, or 5 in every state that has more than 3 or more.
How is that, wouldn't that need a constitutional amendment?
No, it would not, because many states have used at-large to vote Congress, to elect Congress in the past. There's a law that has gone in and out over 200 years, that you can have multi-member districts, not ranked choice voting and not proportional, but 1967 law, the Uniform Congressional District Act, it's on again, off again, it's on again, requiring single-member districts. And UCDA, 1967, the Fair Representation Act says get rid of that law, allow multi-member districts, or more than multi-member districts, mandate it. Now, Massachusetts Democrats wouldn't be happy with that, but they'd be happy that Virginia Republicans, you know, it's all, remember we talked about fairness and winning and all these democratic, our interests are many. But if you believe in fairness, and you don't think a state should disenfranchise huge numbers of people, one way or the other, and you want a true reflection of majority, it's not constitutional issues at all. And so I will wrap up by saying ranked choice voting combines this for the Fair Representation Act and the Worcester history, and the governor and the US Senator races where just one person gets elected. It's all ranked choice preferences. We are an organization. We hope you've been able to sign up when Nathan's been walking around. If you want more information, you're always welcome to help us, support us in any way, including financially. We're still just a volunteer organization, but we're doing great things. We've gone from 50 people to 8,000 in a year. I'll be very clear. Maine said to us, it can be done, and really pushed this forward, okay? They got it for every state and federal election. They're having a little troubles up there, it's a whole other topic, but it was a big event that happened there and we realize we can do this for the state of Massachusetts. And when we talk about the things that bug you about the elections and what you'd want to see better, ranked choice voting has to be on the table, and we can win this and we can get this. And I want to thank you for having me here and be answering any questions or you email and all that. And yes.
So I would say one last question. What do you say, and do you agree with me that this ranked choice voting would actually encourage people who maybe don't win the first time, but may actually win like the second or third time?
The dynamic can go anywhere because being heard,
opposed-
absolutely, yes, of course.
As opposed to our current.
But you remember, we had a different answer when I said, what happens if you get 10% in every district and what we get next time? You said 20. I said 2.
Well, it kind of depends on
No,
the
but,
person you are. And
no, but do you understand my point? When you run in an election and you're billed as a spoiler, and then you tend to diminish your success next time. You're fringe, you're not being heard. I say under ranked choice voting, you're at 15%, you now are credible, and you have a chance to try and become that majority winner. That's, yes, but I wanted to tie that into my other answer about why, when you are spoiler or perceived to be spoiler, your vote diminishes. But let's leave it at that. It's getting late. Thank you very much.